When a man dove into a river to save a drowning baby elephant, the rest of the herd did something no one expected. It marked the end of a rescue few believed was even possible. The tires screeched and skidded across the dusty road, the Jeep jerking slightly as Ethan Morrow gripped the wheel. Ahead of him, blocking the path, stood 3 massive elephants, towering, unmoving. Each one weighed more than 7 tons, nearly triple the weight of Ethan's mud-caked vehicle. A collision would be devastating, maybe fatal. Once a bright white, the Jeep was now completely coated in dirt, nearly camouflaged against the harsh terrain. The elephants were no different. The one in front was caked in thick, wet mud, its legs darkened as though it wore socks made of earth. The muck filled every crease of its wrinkled hide, evidence that they'd been wading through the mire for some time. But these weren't the elephants Ethan was worried about. He slammed his foot on the pedal, the engine howling as he tried to frighten the giants away. 2 of them stumbled back, their feet squelching in the soft earth. But Ethan had to brake hard to avoid hitting them. He yanked the wheel, sending the Jeep into a full 180-degree spin. Mud flew in all directions, splattering the elephants further and painting the air with chaos. This wasn't what he thought he'd be doing when he first signed up as a volunteer over 10 years ago. But after becoming a full-time worker, then climbing the ranks into management, he'd learned the golden rule of wildlife rescue: always expect the unexpected. His mix of instincts and bold decision-making had brought him far. Still, he preferred being out in the thick of it, hands dirty, boots wet, right in the middle of the action. Now, he needed to summon the skill of a rally driver. Just 200 feet from the herd, Ethan hunched behind the wheel, his worn cowboy hat casting a shadow across his face. He revved the engine again, the sound shaking through the bones of the truck and echoing across the open plains of the Otto Elephant National Park. The herd turned. The sound grabbed their attention. They were gathered at the muddy edge of a river, forming a protective, desperate circle. For the past 30 minutes, they had been trying to rescue one of their own, a calf who had slipped into the water. But the riverbank was treacherous, the soil slick and unstable. The young elephant couldn't get a foothold, kept slipping, kept sinking. Its tiny body, slick with mud and exhaustion, thrashed less and less with each passing second. Trunks reached, pulled, wrapped, but none could lift it. Worse, each attempt seemed to push the baby deeper into the water. Panic was setting in. The calf, just 4 months old, tilted its head back, mouth wide, gasping for air. It was drowning. Her name was Kpo, the newest addition to the park's growing elephant population. Otto Park, tucked in the wilderness of Botswana, was a protected haven for elephants, far from the reach of hunters. But safety from humans didn't mean safety from nature. Ethan, now one of the park's lead managers, knew that too well. Water was running scarce, the terrain more dangerous as herds expanded and fought over limited resources. That's what had brought this group to the riverbank, one of the few water sources left in this region of the park. But now, water wasn't the resource at risk. A life was. Rangers stood helpless, watching from a distance. No one could reach the calf, not with the adult elephants crowding around, frantic, protective, unintentionally worsening the situation. Time was running out, and for the first time in over 30 years, the park was bracing for a death. Then Ethan's instincts kicked in, what some called madness, others called genius. Cue narrator tone shift. Quick pause before we continue. If you're finding this story as gripping as we are, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support really matters. Now, back to the rescue. Ethan's plan? Separate the herd just long enough to reach the calf. He would use the truck, lure them back, draw them away, and create a window of opportunity. It was a dangerous idea, and one he never imagined he'd be attempting when he first dreamed of being a vet. But with his team watching, hoping, praying, he felt the weight of their trust. He took a deep breath. The truck roared to life as he dropped the handbrake. Tires spun, flinging more dust and gravel. He swerved violently from side to side, creating a huge, charging silhouette, a predator of metal and noise. The elephants noticed. The elder ones, locked in their failing rescue efforts, turned in confusion. It was working. The herd began to shift, giving way. Ethan seized the chance, skidding the jeep right into the gap and parking it squarely between the calf and the rest of the elephants. For good measure, he reversed and did it again twice, just to be sure. Now, the real rescue began. He grabbed his radio, called in his team, and leapt out of the truck. Sprinting straight into the muddy river, he didn't hesitate. A second figure joined him, Tarek, a fresh-faced ranger barely a week into his post. Wide-eyed and unsure, but moving forward. Tarek was different. A brilliant engineering graduate from a quiet Zimbabwean village, he'd come here for field experience. Torn between a promising career and a deep love for wildlife, he hadn't yet found his calling. Ethan had seen that inner conflict but also saw something else, potential. Now was not the time for doubt. Ethan waded into the cold, sucking water. The calf was still moving, but barely. It was heavy, easily over 200 pounds. Too much to pull. They'd have to push. A crane was en route, but it was slow going on the rugged terrain. ETA? 30 minutes. They didn't have 5. Coordinating with Tarek, Ethan shouted, "On 3!" They braced, counted, pushed with all they had. In the short breaks between, they balanced the baby on their knees to catch their breath and ready for the next surge. But now a new threat loomed. The truck diversion had bought them time, but not much. Across the tall grass, Ethan could see the towering shapes of the elder elephants starting to move again. They were heading back, faster now, determined to reunite with the calf they'd been forced to leave behind. Ethan barked orders to the rangers nearby, directing 2 of them to climb into the back of the jeep and hold their ground. Armed with a tranquilizer gun and a rifle, they took position, not to attack, but as a final measure. Their goal was to defend the calf and its rescuers, only if absolutely necessary. "Hold fire!" Ethan shouted. He still trusted the elephants. He knew they were acting out of desperation, not aggression. But time was running out. Instead of pulling the trigger, the rangers powered on the siren mounted to the roof of the jeep. The strange mechanical wail split the air and startled the oncoming elephants. For a few moments, the herd hesitated, trunks raised, ears twitching. But the confusion didn't last. The giants pressed forward again, this time with urgency. Their thundering steps pounded the earth, trunks swinging, eyes fixed on the metal box that separated them from their youngest member. The rangers braced themselves, fingers on triggers, eyes narrowing through scopes. They weren't aiming to kill, but they were ready to protect. Down in the riverbed, the situation shifted. After countless attempts, the calf's slippery body finally found solid ground. With one last push from Ethan and Tarek, the little elephant hauled itself free. It collapsed into the grass, heaving, soaked, and exhausted. For the young one, it had felt like forever. When the rangers had first arrived, the calf was already starting to sink below the surface. Now safe, Ethan took a few seconds to check Kbo's vitals. The baby was lying on its side, breathing hard but alive. Gently, he checked its heartbeat, looked into its eyes, and peeled back the tongue. White streaks lined the inside of the calf's mouth. Dehydration, that, more than anything, might explain how Kbo had slipped into the river in the first place. A dizzy step, a stumble, and now nearly a fatal fall. Tarek and Ethan exchanged glances. This wasn't just about one elephant. The whole herd was struggling. The signs were there, written in the baby's body. Water was running dry. The park had been facing a growing crisis. Climate extremes had pushed the ecosystem to its edge, and heat waves were turning the land brittle. Water holes were vanishing. The elephants, intelligent, resilient, but still vulnerable, were beginning to suffer. But that would have to wait. They scrambled back to the truck, just in time to witness a moment that stopped everyone in their tracks. Kbo's mother had reached the scene. She charged toward her calf, then stopped. Her trunk reached out, sweeping over Kbo's small body. A soft cry escaped her. Emotional, relieved, powerful. She touched every part of the calf, checking for injury the same way Ethan had done just moments earlier. Then, satisfied, she gave Kbo a gentle spray from her trunk, cleaning off the mud, and maybe the fear too. Finally, She gave a small nudge to the head, a mother's reminder to stay close, before drawing the baby under her massive body. As the herd turned and walked away together, the scene was both heartwarming and universal. A mother's frustration, a mother's love, and the long walk home. It had been a successful rescue. Back at headquarters, the team was celebrating, but not everyone was in high spirits. Ethan and Tarek stood quietly, eyes still clouded with concern. Kbo had survived, but the deeper issue remained. The herd looked weak, thirsty, stressed. A temporary fix wouldn't be enough. The next morning, Tarek climbed into the passenger seat beside Ethan, notebook in hand, recording everything they saw. Something had changed in him. The rookie ranger was now locked in, focused, determined to find a solution. As they drove, he noticed something. The elephants, hundreds of them, were crowding into a small section of the park. Too many animals, not enough resources. The grass was thinning, trees were stripped bare. The land couldn't keep up. They're destroying their own home, Tarek said quietly. Ethan nodded. He'd seen this pattern before. The more comfortable the elephants grew in one spot, the harder it became to move them. That's why it had taken a high-speed vehicle and a near-military diversion to break them away from their calf. This was their preferred feeding ground, and they weren't going to give it up easily. Then, cautiously, Tarek shared an idea. I know this might sound a bit much, he said. Ethan turned. Nothing's off the table, he replied. Coming from him, the park's king of radical solutions, that was encouragement enough. Tarek proposed building a fence. Not just any fence, one fitted with a mild electrical current. Enough to startle, not hurt. Just a soft nudge to convince the herd to move to a different, healthier part of the park. Ethan raised an eyebrow. It was bold, but after what he'd seen, the dehydrated calf, the dying vegetation, he knew they were running out of options. He gave the green light. Tarek, trained as an engineer, didn't just design the system. He rolled up his sleeves and led the construction himself. Knee-deep in mud, hands calloused from labor, he showed the team how to install the fence line. Slowly, a plan was becoming reality. The elephants watched from a distance, curious. They had no idea what was coming. Once the fence was ready, all they could do was wait. The first elephants to touch it flinched in surprise. Nothing severe, just a sudden jolt. Then came the learning. The mothers quickly pulled their calves away. The message spread quickly, not through words, but instinct. And soon, the herd began to move, away from the overused land and toward fresher ground. The results were immediate. The plants began to grow again. Water sources started to recover, and other species, zebras, antelope, even birds, benefited from the renewed balance. The park was breathing again. One wildlife expert even pointed out something unexpected. A little environmental stress could be good for the elephants. If conditions were too easy, breeding and migration slowed. Struggle in small doses could help the population thrive. What began as a desperate rescue had now sparked a new way forward, not just for one calf, but for the entire ecosystem. The success of the project hadn't gone unnoticed. After seeing how effective the new fencing system was, the rest of the park's leadership took note of Tarek. They asked him to expand the work, install similar fences across other parts of the reserve, and even pitch fresh ideas for broader conservation strategies. He was offered a full-time role, second only to Ethan. But it wasn't an easy decision. For Tarek, it meant more than just a job title. It meant committing his future to this place, this life. And just when everything seemed to be working, something unexpected happened. On a routine patrol, Ethan and Tarek were driving across the open plains, talking about the past few weeks, about everything they'd built together. Ethan, as always, was trying to convince him to stay. He reminded Tarek that his contract would expire soon, that the park needed him, that he had a gift. Tarek listened. He cared about the work, but still, a part of him wondered, was this all there was? Was there something else out there for him? That's when they saw them again, the herd. Emerging from the bush in silence, they stepped onto the road, blocking the path without warning. Ethan slammed the brakes. The jeep skidded to a halt. For a few seconds, neither man moved. They didn't know what the elephants would do. Would they charge? Protest? Elephants had been known to flip vehicles. In some parts of the world, rangers had been killed. Their motivations weren't always predictable, and these weren't strangers. The herd remembered. They had seen Tarek building the fences. They had watched Ethan use the truck to separate them from Kbo during the rescue. They knew who these men were. Now, once again, man and elephant stood face to face. But something was different. The herd moved together, slow, steady, almost ceremonial. The sunlight dimmed as their enormous bodies cast shadows over the Jeep. Ethan turned the key, nothing. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. He tapped the gas. Tried again. Nothing. Tarek's hands tightened on the dashboard. This wasn't how he imagined his second month on the job going. The elephants were close now, so close that their massive feet shook the ground beneath them. Ethan tried to stay calm, breathing slowly through his nose, but there was nowhere to go. And then it happened. A single, bright trumpet cut through the silence. Tarek flinched, ducking behind the dash. Ethan's eyes shot up. The sound was quickly joined by more layer upon layer of deep, echoing calls. A chorus of trunks raised to the sky, releasing waves of rich, resonant trumpet sounds. Tarek peeked over the dashboard cautiously. What he saw stopped him cold. They weren't charging. They were celebrating. The herd was thanking them. Ethan let out a surprised laugh, nudging Tarek's shoulder. The fear melted from his face as the music of the elephants washed over them. Even little Kbo appeared, now stronger, emerging from between the legs of the older elephants. She let out a soft trumpet, trying to join the chorus. Tarek smiled, wide and real. They sat like that for 10 minutes, still, silent, honored. The elephants circled the vehicle slowly, inspecting it, brushing their trunks playfully against the rangers, walking with grace and rhythm. It was like a dance, a moment of peace and mutual recognition, a rare connection between human and wild. And somewhere in that moment, Tarek made his choice. This was his calling, this life, this work, these animals. As the herd slowly moved off into the sunset, Ethan turned the key again. The engine finally roared back to life. He smiled, adjusted his cowboy hat, and turned the Jeep back onto the dirt road. Tarek looked out the window at the disappearing herd. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His path was clear now. Final narration. Outro. Did you enjoy the story? If you were in Tarek's shoes, would you have made the same decision? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe for more true tales from the wild. Remember, sometimes the smallest acts, done with courage and heart, can change or even save a life. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care and have an incredible day.